It is my pleasure to welcome to VLGA Connect for the first time the new Minister for Local Government in Victoria, the Hon Shaun Leane. Minister, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say hello.
Terrific to meet you, and there's a lot to talk about, but obviously elections are top of mind for everyone in the sector at the moment, and I'm sure you're aware there's been a bit of a revisiting of the argument that the election shouldn't be proceeding under COVID-19 as we moved into further restrictions. Can you advise us they're definitely going ahead, and you've obviously considered all the issues?
Yeah, Chris, I have considered all the issues and they are definitely going ahead. I've had a number of meetings with a number of councils, as you could imagine, in the last few weeks, and that's a position that I've definitely put. As the Minister, I've got a number of stakeholders to take into account, and one of the probably most important stakeholders are the people of Victoria, and I believe they've got the right to have their right to have to be able to vote on all levels of government and for their representatives of all levels of government. Look, and I understand the push about in the environment we're in of potentially putting the election back, but my concern is that even if I had the legislative power, which I can't, but if I put the elections back 12 months, no one can convince me, even the Chief Health Officer, that our environment will be any better anyway. So to put it back 12 months and then review it, I could be putting it back another 12 months. And it's just, to me, that doesn't produce good governance for 5 or 6 year term councils. So there's other issues around it as well. But what we've tried to do is make it a lot easier for people to campaign and also be a candidate in this time. So I asked my department to make sure that the compulsory mandatory training is now on an online portal. They're working at that, and hopefully that will be available by the end of this month.
Okay, I want to come back to that issue of safe campaigning in a moment, but you mentioned you don't have the legislative power. So hypothetically, if you were to be thinking of deferring the elections, just give us a sense of the process, because I imagine it would have to go back through Parliament. It would be quite a lengthy process to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the way the Act reads at the moment is I do have the ability to push the election back by 1 week. I think we'd have to, and that would be, that could be a single council election, or that could be across the board. And a good example of that would be there could be a flood in a regional area that makes it difficult for the postal vote. So we would have to go back to Parliament to give me any more authority to push it back further than a week.
So the certainty, I think, is the important thing. So you're saying very clearly it's going ahead. And of course, there's been so much work done. We've spoken with the Deputy Electoral Commissioner on this program about the work the VECs had to do. I imagine they would be just throwing their hands up if they had to go back and rework all of that. So certainty is a good thing.
Look, I think certainty is a good thing. And look, everyone knows this is a difficult time for everyone, and everyone's adapting to the new COVID environment. We all have to. And I accept it. I accept there is challenges, but we will do everything in our powers to make it easier for candidates. We're looking at different ways of campaigning. We have had our first advice from the Chief Health Officer is the potential of letterboxing may be okay during the campaign. So I'm working with local government Victoria. I want them to produce some guidelines, some safe campaigning guidelines for all candidates, and we're working on that, and hopefully we'll have that available soon.
Terrific. That's exactly the question I was going to ask you. So you're having ongoing dialogue with the Chief Health Officer around those issues as they arise, ensuring the safe campaigning and conduct of the election.
Absolutely. Look, even things that have come across our table, as in candidates will now be able to register online with the VEC. Originally, they were required to do that in person. So we've altered that. We're working closely with the VEC. We're working closely with the Chief Health Officer and other organisations for the election to go ahead in a safe postal vote. And we believe that can happen.
So people, particularly the governance people in the sector, were eagerly awaiting the regulations for these elections. They've been out for about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks now. One of the key things coming out of that is the mandatory training, which is a first for these elections.
Yeah. So the mandatory training is another item, as I said, that we've made available on our online portal. The mandatory training is designed to be basic training about how people should behave, a code of conduct in the council, understanding of conflict of interest, understanding what support is actually available to a councillor, and how to best go about representing the people they represent. And so in saying that, Chris, I know that the VLGA and others have got some more extensive training for candidates, and I'd really encourage all candidates to look into those opportunities. The more educated you are, the more understanding of what your roles will be. If you're lucky enough to be successful at the election, the better representative you will be.
Well said. I've been an advocate for a long time for candidates to have a better understanding of the role they're putting their hands up for, because in the past there's been all too many cases of people getting elected, being surprised, and then being surprised about the extent of what they've actually gotten involved in. So that better understanding's got to be a good thing.
Absolutely, and Chris, there's always a lot to learn when you get in these positions, but getting in there with a basic understanding of what you're actually putting your hand up for is probably a great start. And I think the mandatory training and other courses available, as I said, I would encourage all candidates to take up those opportunities.
Minister, once we get through COVID-19 and this election period, etc., what other sorts of things have you had a chance to think about what your agenda as Minister might look like in the longer term?
Yeah, I have. Look, and I've got to say, Chris, that like it's a great privilege to be in this position. And something that's reinforced in my mind in recent weeks in talking to a lot of councils, something I've always known, is local councils do some really good work. They do a power of good work, and they do a lot of good things. And local councillors, CEOs and staff do some fantastic work for their community. And I feel like sometimes that doesn't get acknowledged enough. So I'm really keen to hear all the good stories, all the good initiatives that local councils are implementing, and any opportunity I get to share that in any form at all, I'm really keen to do that. I think it's too easy. You know, you could probably set your calendar by it that every 3.5 weeks, there'll be someone on a certain radio show talking about something they probably don't fully understand, that they're not happy that a council is implementing. And it's too easy to be negative. So that's one thing that I think that's really important. And Chris, I know the Act does implement some extra safeguards against bad councillor behaviour, and I think they're very good. But I'm still keen to do more in that area. I think in this day and age we can't have workplaces that are toxic. We just can't. And just because it's been like that for a long time doesn't mean it needs to continue. And as you and me would both agree, it shouldn't. And I suppose, as you mentioned, you know, coming out of the COVID period that we're in, I believe that local councils are going to be a very important pillar in the COVID recovery. And some of the things that local councils can really champion is, and I think every council I spoke to, I've really encouraged to think about being creative in their job creation. I think that anyone at the moment that has their health and a job's doing all right. And so I know I really want to, in saying that, in complementing council initiatives, I know a lot of councils have taken up the opportunity to get into the Working for the Victoria program. I spoke to a small rural council only a few days ago. Their staff numbers increased 50% in the last few months. They went from 100 to 150. So there's 50 people in a rural area that have a job that they may not have had a job. So I think COVID recovery, as I said, local governments are going to be so important. And I'm really keen to work with them in any way the state government can support them in anything they can do in supporting their constituents out of what is a really hard time.
Minister, so refreshing to hear you talk particularly about the image and the reputation of the sector, because for too long many people in the sector have felt that the media in particular uses local government as a convenient whipping boy, if you like. And yes, we kick own goals every now and then, but as you say, the vast majority of people in local government are there for the right reasons and doing wonderful things. So love to hear you talking that way. Also about the conduct issues, open invitation when you've got a better idea on what it is you're going to do to try and improve or bring further elements of that into play. We'd love to talk to you about it.
Oh, thanks, Chris. And I'm considering what trigger I can use to actually open up the dialogue more on this issue. And I suppose I don't want to harp on it, but I read some of the Monitor's report that unfortunately led to some councils being taken over by administrators. And I don't know why it's okay for people to behave like that. It's not. It's not okay. There's been this culture where that's what you do. That's not what you do. And so that's one of the issues I'm really keen to take up on, and getting back to, the good things that local government do. You're right. It's only a select few that can tar everyone. And trust me, I'm a representative as well at a government level. I've had conversations on radio shows about how terrible we all are and trying to convince people of otherwise. But I think that in local government, it's just there to see. Because it's local, you can see the difference. Some of these activities that local government are taking up are improving people's lives dramatically.
Can I also say, I have noticed that you are more present on social media channels, which is terrific, sharing some of those good stories already from around the sector. Again, something very refreshing to see. And if I can speak on behalf of the sector from my very minimal role these days, we welcome you with open arms, and we're looking forward to a very fruitful and mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I'm always open to more suggestions. As I said to all the mayors that I've met recently, and as you probably realise, I know quite a few well anyway.
Yes.
But as I've said to them, councils are the experts of their communities. They'll have so much expertise than I will ever have. So I'm really reliant on their feedback, their suggestions, and their understanding their community to do the best job that I can do.
A delight to speak with you, Minister. I hope we can do more of this as needed, and wish you all the very best in the role.
No, thank you, and I'll take you up on that.
The Minister for Local Government in Victoria, the Hon Shaun Leane, our guest today on VLGA Connect.